Hi, my name's Al Brown. I'm 77 years old and I was born in Omaha, Nebraska on September 30th in the year 1930. The first 5 years of my life I lived with my mom and dad and grandparents on a street called Grace, 21st and Grace. And I lived there until my folks had saved up enough money to buy a home further west in Omaha, an area called Country Club. And we moved there. I'm an only child. My mother's name is Tilly, and my father's name was Sam. And my mother worked before she got married at Central Market in Omaha, Nebraska on 16th and Harney for many years, and my dad was the manager of a newsstand at the Union Station. And he worked for them as the manager for 25 years. And when I was a teenager, I went to work for him. And boy, you talk about a tough boss to work for. He was something. I used to work behind the soda fountain. And it was during World War II. And the servicemen, when they got to Omaha, would get off the train and come up into the depot and look for souvenirs or whatever, or something different to drink, like a Coke or a soda or a milkshake. And I was behind the soda fountain. And my dad had a mirror behind me, so if I put too much ice cream in the sundae or the milkshake, he would bawl me out and say, no, you're not making any money for the company. You know, let somebody else be nice to the soldiers. You don't have to. And I went to high school at Central High in 1944. Played some baseball and basketball there, and I enjoyed it. I've always liked sports. And I wasn't what you call a good student. I unfortunately had a big mouth, and I opened my mouth when I wasn't supposed to. And in those days, if you did that in class, they gave you what they called a ninth hour. So I had so many ninth hours that I had to work out in the yard and dig dandelions to work off my ninth hours. So if you think your grandpa was an angel, forget about it. Let's see.
Tell me about your dad's family, Al.
My dad's mother and father were Joe and Bertha Brown, and my grandfather Joe Brown was a bailiff at the Douglas County Courthouse, and he was there for many years and was a bailiff in the courtroom when they had a trial. And my grandmother Bertha Brown was a homemaker. She raised 5 children, one of which is my dad Sam, and Sam had 2 sisters and 2 brothers. And eventually they all went their own way to California and Chicago and whatever. And when I graduated high school, a good friend of mine named Paul Rosen and I didn't want to go to college, so we decided to join the Navy. And they had a program on then for enlistee volunteers where you could join the Navy for 1 year and avoid the draft. That was about the time of the Korean War, and we sure as heck didn't want to go to Korea. So we spent a year in the Navy, and about the time I was ready to be discharged, my father passed away, and I got a dependency discharge to come home and help take care of my mother. And I got a job temporarily at Zales Jewelry at 16th and Farnham. And I worked there for about 7 years until I was transferred to Kansas City. And that was about 1959. And when I got here, I was lucky to meet my wife, Elaine Dunai, whose parents and family were about as good as I can think of as any family could be. So after a few years, our kids were born. My wife had a son, Stephen, and a daughter, Susan. Susan is 3 years older than Stephen. And Susan was the angel, and Stephen was the challenge in the family. So about 6 years ago, my son Stephen got married, and he married a girl named Stacy Ellis. And Stacy has produced 2 beautiful grandchildren for me, of which I am absolutely infatuated with, if that's the right word. I see my kids, at least once a week, sometimes twice, and we go to dinner together quite often. And my wife, if I haven't told you, passed away in 1964. I beg your pardon, 1984. 1994. They call that senior moment, I think they call that. And I've been alone with my cat Sam for the last 4 years. And I was doing some volunteer work at Menorah Hospital. And since then I've had a few health problems, nothing too serious, thank goodness, but I've kind of become what you call lazy the last year or two. Going back to Omaha, some of my best friends were, as I told you, Paul Rosen in high school, the young man I went into the Navy with, and fellas by the name of Millard Margolin, Don Hoberman, Norman Ruback, Eddie Gorelick, which I think, or at least I hope, are all around today. And I have a cousin that I'm very close with, Blackie Richards. And my friend Buddy Makovsky is one of my best friends of all time. And my mother's mother and father were the name Seglin. And they lived on 21st and Grace, with whom I lived the first 5 years of my life. And I'm very happy to see Mr. Ben Nachman here to help me with this video interview. And I hope that you've gathered some knowledge from this talk. I tried to do the best I can. Naturally, I'm a little nervous. The old expression, unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, in this case definitely holds true. So I love all of you people in my past, and I hope you live as long as you want and never want as long as you live. God bless you.
Now let me ask you, Al, do you remember the names of your father's siblings?
Sure. Sure do. My father, Sam Brown, had a sister, older sister, named Dorothy, Dora Brown, and her younger sister was Toby Brown, who was married to a Pregler, Art Pregler in Omaha. And my dad had a brother named Harry Brown, who moved to Chicago, and a younger brother named Nate Brown, who used to work for my dad at the Union Station for many years, who was an avid musician. He could play by ear the piano and the saxophone, so I really was fortunate to have such talented relatives in my family for many, many years.
Or do you have a lot of cousins on that side of the family?
I have a cousin in California named, they call her, let's see, it was a good friend with my wife Elaine. Her last name was Pregler. She was Toby Pregler's daughter. I can't think, God, I just talked to her several months ago and I can't think of her name. She had a brother, Arvin, who was an airline pilot for United Airlines. And they have children, and I haven't seen them recently, but we're still fairly close. And on my dad's side, his brother Nate had kids named Leona and Louie Brown that lived on Lincoln Boulevard, right off of 30th and Cummings, I think it was. So other than that, it's hard to recall all the family.
How about on your mother's side, the Seglins?
the Seglins, my mother had a brother named Nate Seglin, who was married to Sylvia McZammon, and they raised two kids, Steve Seglin and Susie Seglin. Susie Seglin married Mike Mogul, who most of you probably are familiar with, and also with Susie Mogul. Steve Seglin lives in Lincoln, Nebraska. He's an attorney. And they have one daughter that lives in the East. I don't think she got married. Can't think of her name. There's another senior moment for you. That's just about it. I don't know. I hope I haven't bored you too much with my my past history. And
How about grandparents, Al? Do you remember them very well?
oh, sure. I was fortunate enough to know all four grandparents. They all passed away in the same era when I was in my teens. My dad's mother and father passed away, and my dad in a period of 18 months. And my mother's mother and father passed away a few years after that. My grandmother lived to be in her 80s, and my mother, thank God, lived to be in her 90s. And she was very generous to my kids. Unfortunately, my mother never saw my grandkids, nor did my wife get to see her grandkids. So my mother saw her grandchildren, but not her great-grandchildren. I'm sorry. She passed away before Stephen and Stacy had children.
And what are your children doing now?
My daughter is a food broker. She sells for a company, produce for a food broker here in Kansas City, and calls on large supermarkets and delivers produce, salads, nuts, salad dressing, and whatever they need. She's very happy, and she recently bought a condo in Stanley, Kansas, and is very happy there. And she's never been married, but she loves kids, and she's very fond of her two nephews that Steve and Stacy have that live in Overland Park.
And Steve?
Steve is an attorney. Steve is a practicing attorney. He deals with different kinds of problems, accidents, malpractice, things of that nature. And he works for a company called Brown and Crouppen out of St. Louis, which he is not a partner, but it's coincidental that his name is Brown and the company he works for, partner's name is Brown and Crouppen. So, but he's been with him a couple of years and seems to be very happy. And they live in a very beautiful home in Overland Park, Kansas. And fortunately, I get to see him often. And
What are some of your memories, Al, of growing up as a young kid with your grandparents around holiday time, things like that?
Ben, some of the things I remember is when my mother, after my dad passed away in 1949, a few years later married a man by the name of Alex Plotkin. And they had a nice home together in Country Club. And they had, Mr. Plotkin had three children, a son named David, a son named Willard, and a daughter named Rita. And we were all friendly, like I consider them brothers and a sister for all these years. It's been over 50 years, so, you know, you become very close after that many years. And we used to have holidays, Pesach together, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur together. My mother, I think, was a pretty good cook. You know, the old saying, that doesn't taste like my mother, still holds true. Your wife tries her best, but what else can I say?
And how about some of your memories of Central High?
Central High was, I played basketball in the winter with fellas named Fred Bruning, who had a pizza place in Omaha that's very, Big Fred's, I think they called it. Big Fred Bruning, and Subby Ruma was on the team. Bob Reynolds was on the team and on the basketball team for a couple of years. And baseball, I played a couple of years on the baseball team. And our baseball team was, I guess just fair, but I remember some of the names. There was a catcher by the name of Dick Duda. If you ever remember or know of Dick Duda, he was quite a guy. He was the fair-haired boy. He was the boy next door type guy that all the girls went for. And I can remember getting my letter sweater when I got my letter in baseball and basketball. And every Friday we were supposed to wear that to high school. And I thought I was something special, but I really wasn't. And the teachers seemed to give us ball players a break. We used to sneak into line at the cafeteria and get all kinds of booze, but that's the way it goes. It's not what you know anymore, or even then, it's who you know that counts. So that pretty much covers my time in high school. I remember being in AZA 100 with Kiwi Kirschenbaum, Maury Handelman, Wayne Siegel, Joe Belmont, a bunch of great guys that I played ball with before and after school. And just too many friends to acknowledge all of them, but it was a great time and probably the best time of my life, but it took me 70 years to realize it.
And when did you meet Elaine?
I met Elaine in 1959, a few months after I moved to Kansas City. There was a fella from Omaha by the name of Stan Plotkin, who was no relation to my stepdad, Alex Plotkin, but he was the kind of a guy that made himself known to all the ladies in Kansas City. And he introduced me to Elaine, and she, I thought, was probably one of the most beautiful girls I'd ever seen, and she was, but definitely I thought so. And we went together for a couple of years, and finally reached a point where she said, I'm going to move to Dallas if we don't move on to the next step. So I proceeded to being in the jewelry business to buy a ring for her, and we had dinner and drinks one night, and she said, well, is anything happening? And I reached in my pocket and took out the ring and said, is this what you mean by moving to the next level? And she cried, and I cried at the same time, and we got married 3 months later and had 2 beautiful kids who had 2 beautiful grandkids for me and Elaine. I'd like to recall a time in my life when, before high school, when I lived with my mom and dad in Country Club, there was a park down the hill where the bunch of us guys played baseball and football. Just a small little park, but all the neighbor guys and my age and so forth would come to the park and play every chance we got, because obviously all of us love sports and love to play ball. Played with fellas like Joe Belmont, his older brother Jack Belmont, his younger brother who's passed away, Benny Belmont, and neighbors named Dick Doozer that lived up the top of the hill by the Belmonts, and who else? There was a neighbor around the corner who most of you are familiar with that was not a ball player, but he was a very good friend. Larry Fogel was a very good friend, and that was a great time. And also in the park, I didn't know it at the time, but there was a fella that played ball with us by the name of George Kennick. He had a brother who was an All-American at the University of Iowa. His name was Niall Kinnick. And a few times he'd come over to the park and play football with us and talk about being a thrill. An All-American from the University of Iowa who was a great patriot and served his country well and passed away in an airplane crash many years ago. But anyway, that I want you all to know how much I love you, and if I could see you all today, nothing would make me happier. God bless you all, and be well and be happy. I want to add a special message of love to my grandsons, Miller Evan Brown and Hunter Matthew Brown, that I hope you grow up to be healthy, happy, and raise your own families and have the nachas that I've had for the years that I've known you both. God bless you and stay well.